this.
Wow, you're really mixing wrestling with Alien here. I know you got your championship belts, the author of Engineering Infinity. He was one of the helpers for the big UAP symposium last week presented by MUFON. Boston, that included the Tedesco brothers and Avi Loeb, among a host of others, including UFO Tar Heel, who made one of his rare appearances on that great symposium that you also gave a presentation on. Gene Sticko, how are you doing today, good sir?
All right, how's it going?
Good. Had a good workout. That's a great picture you got there of me doing the Blood Hunter. That's you in your alien costume, I guess.
That's it.
The
That's my new alter ego, just for the show. Like, we're all about the crossover, so let's lean into it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the only channel. Well, the Hannibal, you're a fully Wicked Alien, where this is also airing as a full UAP channel. But my channel is kind of like the one dedicated to UAP people who also watch wrestling. Which there's a bigger crossover than you might think.
Yeah. Oh, looks like I'm one of them now. So
Yeah. Well, that's a real title you have, though, right? That's not. Was that AI or is that a real title that you have?
the photo that I sent. Yeah, no, that's my.
Let's show that to the fans.
This here. So
Wow.
my wife always said I had two talents: parallel parking and ball busting. And for Christmas or my birthday a couple of years ago, she had this beautiful world champion ball buster belt made for me.
That's pretty cool.
Like my hot rod T-shirt. Never knew where I was going to use it, but there we go. Life has a way of manifesting what we need, I guess.
Yeah, you kind of look like Colonel De Beers, if you know who that is, from the AWA.
Oh yeah. I get that. I get Wags from Billions.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna pretend I know what that is, but I'll look it up.
Yeah. Look it up. There's a lot of good. It's like it's a show. I guess it's been on in the past 5 years or so. One of those, a lot of badass traders in a high finance firm and shit. The guy Wags is like a cokehead, but a brilliant trader.
Okay. I don't know if that would help you make better decisions on trading or not, because it would make you make impulsive decisions, I would think.
I'd imagine. Seemed to work for him, though.
Yeah. It seemed to work for Piper, too. I mean, he passed away young, but it definitely helped his promos.
Yeah.
And he was able to function on it for the most part, from what I understand, considering apparently he could do more than most wrestlers in one night and still be able to function normally.
Crazy.
So, but he did pass away in his 60s, so that was the trade-off.
That's why I say always a trade-off. Absolutely.
And speaking of that, for the fans, another wrestler that had a past with that, but he's overcome it, from what I understand, is Marty Jannetty, who I'm interviewing again on the Hannibal TV on Wednesday. So I'm looking forward to that this coming Wednesday, October the 15th. But you guys had your big symposium last week. The biggest individual clip, and I think it had over 107,000, was of Professor Avi Loeb.
Yeah.
Talking about Three Eye Atlas, which it's kind of gone a bit stale this week because they only really released the one picture, and there's so much fake information about it out there. It seems like there's people continuously making fake videos about it, but there are some real mystery elements to it. I know it's not one of the ones you're more interested in, or at least you weren't 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Have you
No. Again, you can't go wrong with Professor Loeb, right? He's a fascinating, and his presentation was really good because he didn't just focus on Three Eye Atlas. He really gave a little bit of history about himself. We had a live audience, dozen people or so that stayed there throughout the almost 10 hours that we were on the air and doing interviews. And they were excited to get an opportunity to ask him questions over video, and all that. But you're right, everything, Three Eye, it becomes so overwhelming to try and seriously follow, because number one, he's the leading expert on it, right? So you can only listen to it so many times, and you're just hearing the same things over and over again. And it always goes between, is it a comet, or is it an alien
And
craft?
it's been 4 on the Loeb scale, by the way, seemingly the entire time. That has not
Yeah.
changed. Even I think he said it might be 3.5 on your broadcast, so it may
Yeah.
even have been less now.
Yeah. And so, I, I have this philosophy, and it sounds awful a lot of times, but as I see a lot of stuff, I'm like, so what? That's my first question. So what? And then I try to answer it. Um, and Three Eye Atlas is certainly isn't that, but like you said, there's so much misinformation, and so many of these. Oh, it's taken a turn, and now it's headed straight for Earth, and it just becomes unmanageable to filter through the noise a lot of times. So I step back and I'm like, well, if they get something and it's going to make headlines, if it turns towards Earth, that's going to make headlines. Otherwise, it just is a whole lot of noise going on.
Yeah, because there is a lot of people that claim to be scientists and stuff, but certainly some of them have some high tech devices that seem that are making a big deal that there might be other objects around it, but it could just be space rock.
Yeah, and
But
you
yeah, they
it's
haven't
hard to tell.
released other pictures though, right? To my knowledge, they've only released 1 or 2 pictures of the
Yeah,
9 cameras or so that were filming it last week.
yeah, exactly. That's all I've seen as well. And you know, you get the pictures, and then you get the conspiracy that goes along with, oh well, why'd they only release 3 pictures? So there must be something to it. It's just hard to find and interact with any serious information unless you get like an Avi Loeb, one on one, like we had the opportunity to. Um, but even then, again, the next day, it's basically the same information all over again. So I think it's certainly keeping like everything, it just keeps the content flowing for people. Um, what we learn from it, and we'll learn more from it, later in the month, later in the year, as it comes, as the images come in, and as it well, I think it's really gets it the closest. Late December, was it?
Yeah, I think there might be another opportunity sometime around the 29th. There's like 3 or 4 opportunities where it'll pass by areas that have cameras on it. But do you think NASA will have to release the pictures that they say they haven't released yet because of the government shutdown? And do you think the only pictures they have released are supposedly the less high quality ones because they want to study the more high quality ones before they release it to give a better answer?
Yeah, and somebody brought that up during the conference. Again, it was a little bit phrased in a conspiracy, sort of way, but oh, isn't it interesting? Three Eye Atlas is now at the closest, and we have this government shutdown, and are we going to hear anything from NASA? And you're absolutely right. All that's going to do is delay anything, right? So they're trying to get out the quickest low res, low quality images that they can, just to satisfy the public curiosity. Then you figure there's people behind the scenes who are going to sit there and analyze the other photos, and they want to come out with something intelligent to say about it. And then the government shuts down, and those people are probably sitting at home and waiting to get back in the office and get back to it. um, the other the other aspect of that now, which will be interesting to see, now NASA is being redesignated as an intelligence agency. So will they behave differently now when it comes to what we might normally expect? Um, the way NASA would respond or share information about things they find in space. I think this is really the first test of NASA as the intel agency versus the space agency.
Mean Gene, that's your new nickname. Now,
All
what
right.
do you have to say to the UFO report?
What's the possibility? Three island without uh, really no connects it. He doesn't mention comets or inner object or
I
inner.
don't know what the hell's happened here. Sorry. I tried to take myself out of it and now you're gone. Um, so hold on a second here.
I'll throw myself up there, but I can't.
What the hell? Oh, maybe
Oh, there we go.
oh, yeah, okay, there we go.
Yeah. Um,
I don't even know what Valerie's prediction or
Valeris is, yeah. So that's in my father-in-law's work. It's the
okay.
he talks about 2024, and it's all that's all much more consciousness focused.
Somebody filmed the UFOs were flying around the space station. There's a lot of people doing that.
Lot.
There's some weird guy, and I have to say this guy was very, very weird, a conspiracy theorist, and I'm sure he might watch this and get mad at me, but from around the San Francisco area, he actually spent $35 FedExing me pictures that he believes were UFOs from around the sun that he was too afraid to email me because he thought the government was
Uh,
going to intercept the emails. And I don't know, he's just very bizarre.
yeah, I've got something similar. It might be the same person. Sharing they have some kind of database that they've seen or had access to that has several thousand images of objects that appear to be near the sun. I mean, again, interesting, not my area of expertise.
Yeah.
In my father-in-law's work, it talked about a large object being near the sun, extracting plasma, from the sun as part of the system. So if it does happen, I can uh, I have an explanation for it, I could say, or I can see it happening, based on what I've read and studied. But as far as it's like anything else. It's tough because I know there's a lot of people that have information and they see things and but without the analysis behind it. Um, and in the same way, you getting sent pictures of objects near the sun. It's like great, but what am I supposed to do with them? It doesn't prove anything, like so much
Yeah.
many things that get floated around. They're interesting, and you just have to. I think for anyone sending or possessing that stuff, you've got to do the work before you start pushing it out, saying what it is. I mean, even with me, we spent almost 5 years assessing, validating the provenance, all of those things, um, to understand ourselves what it was we had to put out and what it was we needed to say about it and why it might be important. So to say, okay, I've got pictures of something near the sun, great. What's the what's the evidence trail that goes along with it, and what's somebody supposed to do with it?
Yeah, I actually sent some of his pictures to one of my astronomer friends, and he said he's not reading um, the 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 diagram correctly or whatever he's getting it from. Because my astronomer friend said he wasn't correct. I tried to talk to this guy a few times too. One of the times it was the phone was mysteriously disconnected than the other 2 times he no-showed. So
Uh,
I question his credibility, but, yeah, I don't know. I do think you have a good, not theory, but what your father-in-law says about how energy is supposedly get the energy from the sun for the craft, which is the interesting part about the Three Eye Atlas, because if it does go behind the sun, is it
right.
then going to get its power from the sun,
Yeah.
change
Yeah.
directions? So
Well, right, that'd be an interesting thing, it's on a trajectory, it's on a course, it goes behind the sun, so they should have some calculations of when it's gonna appear again, and if that seems delayed all of the sudden, you might wonder, "Oh, well, what were they doing back there for that extra amount of time?"
and I did talk to several people from Canada this week, and apparently there's no interest in that thing at all from Canadians, and it's not in the news whatsoever. So
Have you heard from the because there's a, Canadians for Disclosure group. Have
yeah,
you
I've
heard
heard about
heard
it, but
from
I
them?
don't think they're making waves or anything over there.
Oh, okay, yeah, 'cause there was a couple of things I was on, and it seemed within a short period of time, I don't know if they were trying to make a PR push or whatever, but on, one other podcast, there was a guy from Canada. A couple weeks later, a second one. From the second one, the guy wrote me, sent him all the information, and was like, "Yeah, happy to help out. Let's get the word out," and then just never hear from him again. So I'm like, "All right, well."
I do know they had a poll in Canada a few years ago, polling Canadians if they wanted the government to look more into this, and people did not want the government spending tax dollars on this. But it's not as open as it has been here as far as what's been in the news about what's going on, and we don't have people like Congressman Tim Burchett did an interview with Tucker Carlson this week,
Yeah, that
going
was
into
probably a
even
good one.
more detail. Did you see that?
Yeah, yeah, I did, and it's great. It's great to see them talking about it. It's great to see them engaging in it. It's great to know to learn about what it is they hear. Um, and what it seems they're seeing as some kind of evidence. The problem becomes again the saturation of it, the formats, the cliffhangers. It. I don't know if it helps in any way. It does it. Is it moving the needle forward at all by him telling the stories without, and here's what we're going to do with it. That's always my thing. Stuff just goes out there and it's like, great, now what? Why are you telling the story? What is your intent to do with this information now that you have it? And what do you need? What do you need from people? Do you need something from the people, or are you just keeping us entertained?
He's been pushing a lot about the alien bases underwater, mentioning that there's 4 or 5 underwater, one near Catalina Island, apparently, but there are several in various different oceans, supposedly. What are your thoughts on what he's been saying? He didn't really give any new information on Tucker Carlson about this, but he did reiterate what he's been saying everywhere else about it.
Yeah, and again, it's good in so much as it's keeping the story out there. It's continuing to circulate the information to show the interest. Um, you know, there's bases under, there's alien bases under. Great. So when are we going to learn? When I just want to start hearing some things. Yes, I know there's a base under Catalina Island, and I am working with the Navy right now to do what? Or are we all supposed to send divers into, the Catalina Island? Are we supposed to figure it out for themselves? And that's why again, I don't quite know the point. And the counter to that is some people would say, well, that's just him spreading more disinformation and trying to murky up the waters from other projects and things like that. So it just seems all so chaotic, um, without direction, without purpose, a whole lot of storytelling, without solid ideas on moving it forward and moving the needle forward. Is he doing it because he wants to see if more politicians will get involved in it, or is it just because it's a great constituency for him, and trying to keep him happy? It's like, I don't know what he wants to achieve with that.
Yeah. He seems like a nice guy. I've interviewed him, but yeah, there wasn't much more revealed in that interview than we've heard. Somebody's wondering if the congressional hearings have produced any evidence or just more stories to sell books and documentaries. Some of them don't have books, but I do notice some of them open up YouTube channels and stuff after, so I'm not sure if
Yeah.
I think the only one that who is that pilot that the very first
Oh,
pilot
Freever.
yeah, he's the only one that doesn't seem to be doing this for any reason other than
Yeah.
to testify. Everyone else in one way or another has benefited in some way, and I'm not saying that they don't have legitimate reasons, but everyone other than Fravor seems to also have other related projects.
Yeah, and so it becomes part of your life. Okay, so again, same thing in my situation. Um, so out of the hearings on the ninth, what have we gotten? We were right. We just get more stories and more. We've got the Jeremy Corbell weaponized series that he's dripping. Sessions like that and everybody talking. Um, we've seen the one guy who was it, the Immaculate Constellation. He's selling T-shirts now. T-shirts of a design like, I don't. Is the design supposed to be come
And
from
he's
one of?
got books and stuff out too, that guy.
Yeah, and it's like, that's great. You're and don't get me wrong here. I think I had a guy I used to work with. He's like, Gene, I got some intel for you. I was like, okay, what's the intel? And everything he'd tell me was intel. I was like, that's just kind of information. That's not really intel, but it's good. And we're sort of in the same situation, right? We're hearing from people who have proximity, if not direct access to these classified programs. They are consistent in the
Michael
story.
Schellenberger, sorry, I looked up
Ah,
his
yeah, yeah,
name.
sure, yeah. They're consistent in the stories that they're telling. It, certainly, it adds to the profile. Let's say if you're building a profile of where people were, and that's probably the most useful thing we can do with everything is, get the giant map up on the wall. I should probably do this with this wall. Get the giant map up here and start pinning. Okay, somebody was here and this is what they saw, around this time period, and here's the other reports. And so you have this profile of the types of reports, the types of craft, the conditions, all of these things that come out, from the people, and putting that together with everything else. That's what you need to. I mean, that's like what I'm working on. That's how I spend my days. So we talk about, right, they're putting out books about their story that we've already heard, that I don't know, is there going to be anything more in there? Yeah, Rep Burchett has t-shirts on his thing too. um we've got I saw somebody else started, they were trying to raise $3,000 for the whistleblower protection. And I'm like, I don't know what 3,000 bucks is going to do for whistleblower protection, if you're talking about having to hire lawyers or bodyguards, or even install a home
That's a
security.
week of hiring a bodyguard, maybe a low-level bodyguard will cost that
Yeah, I
much
mean,
from
and, right, exactly. You're talking, back in the days when I used to hire bodyguards, we were at 150 an hour for somebody decent. So, unless it's some guy from the local gym you get for 30 bucks an hour. I don't know what you're going to do, but so, and then, right, the guy who had the aliens doing the intergalactic charades when he did the called them with his mind and shit.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
$500 class now to take. So
Oh, what's his name? Stephen Greer?
no, the guy
Because
with
he
the
charges
mane tattooed on his
10,000.
face. Batista, better something, not Batista.
Batista, not the wrestler, I imagine.
No, no.
He is an alien in one of the Marvel movies.
Yeah, there you go. No, he was just on with not long ago with Ross Coldheart,
Yeah,
talking
he
about
was
they told him to
supposedly
put his dog
apparently
away.
his jujitsu record apparently is exaggerated. I have some friends that actually looked up because they were acting like he's some sort of master jujitsu guy too.
Oh God.
Apparently, they looked him up, and he's that part was exaggerated. So anything could be exaggerated. But yeah, I remember. Well, the one thing is, I can watch a lot of UAP stuff, but his interview was really boring. I found.
Well, right, for somebody who can telepathically connect and call aliens down from call
They
them
didn't
down.
show that, right? That was the
Yeah, I,
3 hours of saying how he can do it with no showing of it.
right. It's like what's with the fucking trend now of the bent spoons? Have you noticed this? Everybody with their
I'm not really interested in that type of this psionic stuff, to be
yeah.
honest, because I really find it boring. But there might be something to it. But to me, I'm just going to need to see more proof.
Well, exactly. I mean, and that's what a photo of a bent spoon is not proof. Show me you sitting there staring at the spoon, and the spoon bends and twirls itself around itself, then I'm impressed. So, eh, you know, getting back to the question and the comment about the outcomes of these things, I think that's been the crux of the problem. It's the thing I'm personally trying to push through, right? So, my days are spent, I've got, the source documents. Yes, they're out as a book, but anybody can read it for free, online. But I'm putting in the work to take my story that I have and not only challenge it, for myself and my own psychological well-being, make sure I'm not making an idiot of myself. Um,
Is it
but
Jacob Barber? Is that the guy's name, the psionics guy?
no, well, he might be one of them. Like I said, the interview I was watching, it was Michael, with a B. Um, but so it's like now I'm trying to do something with it, and I do this, I do, any forums I can get on to share it, to reach out to say, listen, and anyone else who wants help, and I have some people, who are jumping in and help, and I think that's where this all gets stuck. They come out with a story and their information or their evidence, however you want to categorize it. And then they're just, supposed to like sit on the laurels. And so, in the same way, I can go back to Burchett and all the rest of it. Great. Now, what are you doing with this? So, how are you bringing it forward or whatnot? And I guess the conundrum, obviously, for a lot of them, in it is that they're trying to make it their day job. Um, and the only way to make it the day job is to sell stuff, sell stuff, or pass the proverbial hat, um, or they've got to get a day job and do it at night. I don't know what to tell them.
There's another guy on here wants to know if you remember in the 70s, Uri Geller claims aliens gave him the power to bend the spoons. That's before my time, but you may
That's
remember it.
that I was a small child in that generation. Um, Yeah, I vaguely recall it, and now I'm seeing so much of him again. I'm having flashbacks to my childhood and remembering it. I think he just did a Twitter post saying warning Trump not to go to Egypt because he had a bad feeling. Um, Again, something you might want to call an embassy or call the Secret Service instead of posting a video on X directly to the president if there's something that you have. Um, but yeah, I mean, all the I'll go back to my premise. So what? So you can bend a fucking spoon with your mind. What are we supposed to do with that? What are you supposed to do with it? If you could bend spoons with your mind, what's it mean? You're special. Right? It's your special thing that you have. That's what so much of this feels like is how do we outspecial one another? I think we've seen it in society. I think we see it now, in the UAB community. The oh, I was abducted. Oh, I saw something. Oh, saw something. I was abducted. Oh, you were abducted. I was abducted and tested on. Oh, you were abducted and tested on. Yes, and they, and they implanted something, and they got me pregnant, and they implanted something, got me pregnant, and gave me dinner, and oh well, they were horrible to me. Oh well, they didn't abduct me. I transcend my body and go up there, and like great. So what?
Speaking of abductions, was I guess your father-in-law's book was all about the actual technical aspects of these craft. It didn't go into whether there's been abductions or not in Russia. But what do you make of the abduction phenomenon? And have you heard it's going down in recent years? Because a lot of people say there's been less abductions in the last 10 to 20 years
Yeah.
than there were in earlier decades.
Yeah, I think again, I don't dispute anybody or have any reason to dispute people that put themselves out there to say a lot of these things during the periods. And again, that might seem contrary to what I was just saying about trying to outspecial one another, but it's all within the context. It's all within the timing that you see and you hear about these things, and within the evidence that they provide themselves, as to gives you a feel for the credibility of it. um you know I think the it all comes down to that question: if there are NHI, they are around, what is the purpose? And something struck me the other day as we were talking, having this question on another show I was doing, of are they really interested in, or the question was about trying to shoot them down. Was that a good idea or not? That if does that does the video where the Hellfire missile got shot at the craft indicate that they do know what it is and we're trying to take it down?
Avi
Or
Loeb doesn't think that was an alien craft, by the way.
I say, yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but we'll just go with for the sake of the argument, that it's a UAP, and so and should we be trying to shoot those things down? And it struck me, sitting with my sister outside I'm having a cigar, and the bumblebees flying near her. She's trying to shoo it away, and I always joke. I said, "Well, he just thinks you're a beautiful flower, and he's just observing you and wants to, see you." And it kind of struck me, because people say that too. They said, "Well, they're just observing us. That we're just here. They are going about their business, and we just happen to see them, and they notice us, and they kind of observe, and all the rest." And if that, again, were the case, it was more of an observational thing, or then every now and then they might say, "Yeah, let's pick a couple up and check them out," right? It's like, what do we do in other environments when we go into when divers go into the ocean? They have things that they're exploring, or they have a specific work purpose, for being down there. And the fish come up, and they generally ignore them. But if it's a dolphin, then you see they'll interact with them. And then you have other ones, we go down and we snatch them out of the water and we bring them back to the surface, and put them in the aquariums, and do whatever we're going to do with them. Are we just are we a microcosm of that same thing that we do? When you're a kid, you went out and you got an ant farm, and you got the ants in there, and the ants all wondering, hey, where's everybody? Where's that big group of workers we had? They suddenly disappeared. You know, we might be that insignificant to an advanced life form, and I think Avi has similar kind of theory. That we may think we're more important to them than we actually are.
Yeah, Darcy Weir, the filmmaker of numerous UAP Tubi movies that I've interviewed the other day, was mentioning they might just see us like ants, and what benefit would we have making deals with ants? Do you
Right.
think we would be that insignificant to them? Because ants can't blow us up, but we could technically blow up a planet that they have bases on, and this is why I think there is some type of deal with them,
Yeah.
that we don't blow up the world, because that would, in theory, that would affect their bases in the ocean, right?
Right. Whatever it is, whatever their purpose is, whatever it is they need from the earth, then yeah, it absolutely makes sense that the nuke aspect has them saying, "Oh, now we got to pay attention to these things. They've gotten out of hand, and they're gonna mess up what we need, what we're doing here."
Paul wants to know, what are your thoughts that some of them, called hybrids, might already be integrated into society? A lot of people think that's the whole point of the abduction program, is to, and that would be a way of take. Would they actually come down and take us over, or would they slowly just get into the population in a way, and then eventually there'll be so many of them
Yeah.
that be, I mean, that's more of like a movie type theory, but it might work. I think that David Jacobs, the professor at Temple University in Philadelphia, who alleged that he was abducted like 100 times,
Yeah.
claims that they have a hybrid program like that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say they don't. So why not? What is? eh, Yeah, I think of this stuff a lot of times, and I try to avoid the putting the human emotions on, and the human morals, and all of that. Any species is going to evolve according to the environments and the conditions, and the societies that they are in, right? And so we look right here on Earth, and we can see how different we're all here on the same planet, and we can go state to state. You can some places go to the next city, and the culture and the environment that people are raised in, their value systems, all of those things can vary wildly. So in the same way, to sort of assume that an NHI shares the same common value system as humans, when as humans we don't share the same common value system to the next city sometimes, never mind the next state, never mind within an entire nation, never mind the entire world. um so I think the answers, should the answers come, are going to be, I've said it before, a lot more disappointing to people, than people like to fantasize of the possibilities. I think it's going to be much more practical, much more pragmatic, if there is a alien human breeding program. Then the point of that program is likely the NHI trying to continue on their species or advance their species before it's they're trying to advance ours. That's just the, that's almost a fundamental of the universe.
Yeah, because someone said, would they be upgrading us? Well, who knows?
So here's the interesting thing, if we talk about upgrades, right? The In my father-in-law's work, he talks about humanity receiving these sort of cosmic DNA downloads. And so he, talked about 2024 was the last one that, or the was the next one, I should say, that we were going to receive. You remember he wrote this stuff in the 80s. We found it in 2019. So we're looking through it and we see, in 2024, society is going to go through this bifurcation where people will begin to split, and it's a result of this cosmic DNA download update that we get, that is part of the transition to our higher levels of consciousness and our becoming brought into the galactic, the world, the galactic universe, and all of those things. So in the one sense, that, at least for me, is some evidence that yes, there's an upgrade. Does the upgrade include, well, now we got to go down and bang and produce some offspring? If it was humans, we'd find an excuse to bang. So
Speaking of Galactic Federation type thing, what do you think of that? We've heard Paul Hellyer talk about it, and this Hayam Mashed, Israeli Space Force leader, talk about that supposedly there's some federation of aliens in the galaxy, and there's rules in place, kind of like a United Nation
yeah.
type of thing. Do you think this could be possible, and we just don't know about it?
So I think if it exists, right, it's a hot fucking mess. If there is a galactic federation that exists, that has established an entire set of rules and protocols, for how the members of the federation are going to not interact with humanity, right, or interact with these things on this planet that we call Earth. The if that were to be true, then I would say the evidence that we have points to the idea that that galactic federation is a hot mess. It can't control anything. It's chaotic. And I'm more disappointed. I'd better off not knowing anything about the NHI, because it seems that they're just highly disappointing. If this is the structure, and I say that because, again, to the point we were, what I was saying, talking about earlier, right? We've got all this gambit of, I can communicate telepathically, to they kidnap me, to they walk through my door and we have sex. All of that, all of that can't be true. We can't have interdimensional portals and wormholes that they zip in and out of, that makes things easy, makes it the easy way for them to get here. Yet we have giant motherships disguised as giant space rocks that take, I don't know how long to get here. So if there is a galactic
Yeah.
federation, if they are tuned in and listening, get your shit together.
Yeah, because that was one thing I was discussing with Darcy Weir the other night too. Some of them have bases here, and there definitely has been some contact here. But are these the same ones? If that is a giant ship the size of Manhattan here, is that the same one that's coming here, or are we working with the people that are already here, or may actually be here before us, to keep those ones out? Like
Maybe,
that's
and the Galactic Federation would know that, and the Galactic Federation would be doing whatever it is the Galactic Federation does. If there, if there were one, that's why I say, you know, again, I can't say that there's not, but I'd say at least the evidence points to the idea that there either is not one, or if there is one, it is super messed up.
the I did read a book recently of someone that had gone over all of these disclosed files, and there is military proof dating back to the '60s of credible people saying we've been observed by them since the '60s. So they seem to have been at the very least watching what we've done for a very long time. And for the people that say, well, why haven't they done anything? This is why we don't have to worry. Well,
No.
is it because we're getting better and better weapons and better craft, and we're now trying to go to Mars? Because why would they have cared about us with our muskets and swords, like 150, 200 years ago? Because technology's really only gone into the flying what, for like 120 years-ish at this
Yeah,
point?
yeah, and and so again, it's all good stuff, right? It's all it's all information that adds to the piece of the puzzle. But what do we do? What do we do about it if it's true? You know, what is the deal? What is the deal with the government? What is their interest? Is their interest just, minerals, resources, all the rest of it? These are the things I think we just have to find that evidence for. Do we not explore the ocean as much as we explore space because, well, that's part of the agreement? Because that's where they're doing and getting whatever it is they need. I can't begin to explain. Um, but that's why I say I think for it to listen, there's something. And for me, it's what do we do with the information we have that we can have our hands around and get our arms around? And what are we doing with it? How are we moving the how are we either moving the needle forward to get the answers that we need to make everybody comfortable and happy that, yes, we definitely know, or what are we doing to prepare for the fact if we sit back and I think a vast majority of people in the community at least will say, I don't need disclosure, I know they exist, I know they're here, I don't know what they want or why. So okay, then how does that change life for you? How does that change the things that you're doing or planning to do, or if it comes to a fact that okay, now they're going to be moving into houses next door to us one day, what are we doing about that stuff? I'm just kind of too much of a pragmatic person, um when to go down a lot of the rabbit trails, because that's why I say, so what? So then what do I have to do about this then?
Have you researched much? I think it's called Lake Baikal in Russia, where there's supposedly a base as well, and there is stories about Russian military submarines having some encounters with alleged beings, and they're beings that actually were also outside of craft, swimming around in more advanced diving type outfits.
Yeah, so that's in Kazakhstan. So that's actually, my father-in-law and mother-in-law, before Natalia was born, lived on the well, yeah, they were based sort of on the eastern side of that area. And there's Kapustin Yar, then a little bit more to the west, I believe, if I remember my geography correctly, is the Baikonur Cosmodrome. So that whole area has a long, deep history of UFO phenomenon, as well as just in general being there, particularly during the USSR time, being the advanced missile testing bases, communications, all of that stuff was within these military cities around there, and Natalia's parents lived on one of them for just prior to her being born.
And I've also heard that, and I know this is more out there, but Lake Okanagan here in Canada, it supposedly has a sea monster and it's had a lot of UAP activity. I've heard Lake Baikal supposedly has a sea monster too. Do you
Um,
think that, yeah, do you think it could be any connection there?
there was a interesting movie that documentary, I shouldn't even say movie, that I just saw a couple of weeks ago. Jeremy Norrie is the guy's name, and I'm going to give a shout out to the website because people should go there and check it out. It's called theskyisland.com. And on that site, he's got over 30 documentary films, and a lot of them are about different aspects of the UAP phenomena. And the one I just saw was like I feel bad, I forget the title of it. It's like their um, what they want or something like that. But the premise of it was essentially talking about, it was really a consolidated history of all things UFO lore, from ancient aliens to modern time, let's say. And it was presented in such a concise and compelling framework of how all of these things work together and how they all really fit within history as we know it, biblical and just pure, uh, Earth history, as it might be. And one of the areas that they talked about were these cryptids, and they were talking about Bigfoot in particular. And that got me thinking about like the Loch Ness monster, and we have in Vermont, Lake Champlain, we have Champy there as well, and
They're literally all over the world, whether they're still there or not. Like there's reports of those things literally worldwide, all
yeah.
similar. So, but I understand there's very little proof that they may still exist currently.
Well, and what the woman in this documentary was suggesting was that these cryptids are sort of interdimensional beings, and they are sentries, that the places where they're found are the high energy portals, let's say, um, to these other dimensions. And if I recall, she was talking about this idea of, well, under Antarctica, and there's the hollow Earth and civilizations being under the Earth, and all of that. And so, she was talking specifically about the Bigfoot and Yeti being those sentries to scare people away that got too close. And then, my first thought is, well, if it's underwater, and I'm like, oh, you've got your Nessies and your champs, and your underwater creatures, so to speak, that would act potentially in the same way.
Yeah, very well, it's interesting to look at that and see like the connection because yeah, there seems to be increased activity of UAPs around some of these things. And obviously we haven't explored the ocean that much. So there it wouldn't surprise me if some of those things still exist in the
Yeah.
ocean.
And that's why I said the thing about, for as critical as I am, is, stories with no proof. But the fact of the matter is, I think there's something there to put together. Again, that documentary I thought did a excellent job at doing it. It didn't really, didn't go into opposing views of a lot of the theories that they were talking about. As I had mentioned it to somebody else, they said, "Oh yeah, that woman," and there's a lot of things, sort of gaps in the theory. But I found it very compelling, very interesting. Made me think. I was just having this discussion last night about myths and legends and lore, and is it just made up or it gets twisted over the years? And I sort of asked the question. I said, well, we're going to Mars now. So imagine we colonize Mars, in 150 years, and we have communities, and we have a disastrous event on Earth, and the Earth to Mars shuttle stops running. In 2 or 3 generations, the people that were traveling between Earth and Mars are going to be a thing of lore, a thing of legend to those generations, right? So, I'm in my 50s. Listen, look at the way now, like, we call people Hitler, right? Everybody's Hitler. Fact is, a lot of the kids don't even really get what that is. We grew up in a generation, where my parents, my father directly remembers Hitler, and so it was more real to me than it was to him. But my grandkids are going to be like, whatever, the Soviet Union, communist, right? I grew up in the
And we
Cold
could do a
War.
whole podcast on him sometime just for the hell of it, because I what I didn't realize recent until recently
Yeah,
was how much they tricked the German people to make them believe lies to get into this, where I thought they were more like just behind him for his values, but I
yeah,
didn't realize that he tricked them in a lot of ways to get in his position to begin with, but also to make them hate the
yeah,
Jews and other races.
yeah,
Because it's
absolutely.
quite amazing. It couldn't be done these days what he did with the
It's
way
being done
information.
today. It's
Yeah,
actually it's actually being done today. And that's the like I said, everybody likes to think if they were in Germany as Hitler was rising, they would be the opposing voices. And you're right. The fact of the matter is you don't realize it until after the fact, and you sort of wake up and look around and like, oh my God, what was I saying and what was I believing? But to specific to the UFO
oh, but
side.
yeah, they could definitely do false flag operations and stuff. Yeah, I'm just saying they couldn't be as blatant, like dress up Jews as Russians or something and fake attacks and just show a bunch of dead Jews. They'd find other ways of doing
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Some of
But
that, but they have a long UFO history as well, and it's
yeah,
often suspected that it was because Hitler recovered an alien craft in the Black Forest, that the technology or information that they were able to extract out of that is what really perpetuated him. And I
he hated
recently
the Freemasons too, just to throw that in there, which is kind of weird.
oh there was a whole society history, secret society in Germany, that sort of resembles and mind you, Hitler wasn't German, right? He was Austrian. That But there's these occult societies that sort of resemble it to a degree. But I just found a real interesting book, that was written by a Russian general, and in it he talks about at the end of World War II, the Red Army in Germany. There's an inventory, and in this inventory of things they were taking from the Germans included 2 saucer craft. Now, it didn't say they were, from another planet or anything like that, but it is a piece of this puzzle of the origins and genesis of UFO reverse engineering, and that aspect of the Cold War between the US and Russia that might be, again, historically feeding everything that we're seeing and experiencing today. might be one of those key Genesis events that deserves being dove into a little bit more with the what the Germans exactly were doing.
And terrible battle plan too by Hitler. It just he definitely was doing a little bit too much of that, crystal meth to think, like,
Yeah,
Germany's not that big of a country, like, he's traveling to these far out places and, like, sending people
to
into the
Antarctica.
Arctic and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And in the desert, it's like, why do you even want this territory? And why don't you focus on what's around you before you send everyone out to freeze to death to get this land that's doesn't even have much worth? It doesn't even make sense.
Well, and that's why, again, the occult side of it comes into play, where they're saying it wasn't so much about having the land, that it was part of their quests looking for, these materials that he believed were hidden in all of these places. If you go to like Indiana Jones, right? Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's why he wants to be in the desert, go find the Ark.
Yeah, I
The
truly
Dark
believe a guy like Hitler could be a hybrid if hybrids exist, just because if you look at his story, it's truly amazing what he was able to do from nothing. A guy that was living in, like, shelters at one point, wasn't he?
Yeah,
He goes on to rule a
a stranger.
country and
Yeah.
start, like, a terrible war. It's like he had superpowers almost, to be able to do this.
Yeah, it's like that psychic, the psychic influence, the ability to influence people, and and there's less exotic explanations. There's evidence. They find videos of him rehearsing and rehearsing his speeches and deciding the perfect angles. He understood the psychology of not just the words he chose, but the way he said them, coupled with the physical presence of how he did it.
It's amazing. Well, we're pretty much hitting our time for today, but the last thing I'll ask you about is for the Men in Black.
Yeah,
What percentage do you think ever was the aliens themselves telling people to shut up? Because there seems to be a lot of evidence out there that it's them not wanting to be revealed. And yes, of course, there's a lot of cases where it's clearly the military or some agencies that have existed at various times that have had contracts to tell people to shut up or to take
yeah,
evidence away from situations. But there's also cases where it appears the Men in Black could have been extraterrestrials, judging by their appearance when they're meeting these people in strange accents
yeah,
and weird skin.
yeah. Like like anything, right? I think that is highly probable. If it was, if everything were at that level and we had this cooperative agreement, and the aliens themselves were human enough looking but odd enough looking to cause even more discomfort when they went and spoke to somebody, right? It's one thing to have somebody that is from the area and shows up and starts talking to you, telling you, well, you really shouldn't be doing this and that, but then this guy comes in and he's just, you ain't from around here. um in that time period would have added an extra sense of dread and concern and fear into the people. So in that way it would have made sense, and it would have made sense over time, again, as cameras came out and things, all this recording stuff became better, that they would have said, well, now that is too risky, um, to send somebody like that, as opposed to we just need to send a military member or whatnot. So I think it's
Or
there.
they do whatever they're doing to people now, the whistleblower, alleged bullying that's happening, and supposedly killings as well. They keep pushing that agenda that people have supposedly been killed
Yeah,
Ross Coulthart.
yeah. I mean, I heard from somebody I actually was in the military with. So we were in Germany together, and then he went to he was out in Nevada. And, no, I'm sorry, he was out in California, and he worked sort of in the intel side. And he recalls he had officers that he was working with who had previously worked like Area 51. And he said, yeah, there was a point somebody made the comment about, well, a lot of these retired contractors from out there just wind up in the desert anyway.
I guess that's one easy way to make sure nothing ever gets out. So actually, that I'll put this last question up here from the fans, and we'll cut that off. We'll do
Yep.
this again sometimes, fans. But speaking of people that were allegedly bullied, this has to do with what we were just talking about.
So Bob Lazar, all I can say about Bob Lazar's stories are that I have taken the information about the craft that he describes, all of those elements, the drawings, all of that, and I ran those against the body of work that I have out of the Soviet Union reverse engineering program. And it is very much aligned. And it seems like if you it's like the difference between a Mustang and a Mustang GT, very similar from the engineering I have to the descriptions Bob Lazar gives. So, you know, anything else he said, I'm not that familiar with. I've been in this community a whole of I just celebrated 4 months yesterday. Was 120 days since
Four
I've
months, four
yeah,
years, you mean?
no 4 months.
You didn't write that book in 4 months?
No, well, so right, so I've had the book I published the end of November 24, but
Oh,
I
okay.
never started interacting with the UAP community. It was June 11th that I of this year that I did the first press conference. So that's what I consider. That's when like people were saying, "Oh, have you talked to so and so? Have you talked?" I don't know fucking who anybody is. I had outside of the guy with the weird hair on Ancient Aliens and Nick Pope,
Yeah.
I knew from Ancient Aliens. I knew none of these names, none of these people. The previous hearings were, yeah, I watched them. Could not tell you to save my life anybody's name, who they were with. I had no interest in this subject whatsoever. And over the years I spent translating the book, trying to figure out, is it legit? Does it relate to the all the stuff people are talking about? I focused on the phenomenon, I focused on the programs, and then June 11th, I did my press conference, and here I am 120 days later with the great Hannibal.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm only an amateur in the UAP community, but I learn more and more by talking to people like you and Avi Loeb and Nick Pope.
Yeah.
So many people that I get the chance to speak to, and I
I'd
really
love to
enjoy
talk
it.
to Nick Pope and hey, real quick, how was Case UFO Tar Heel? His sighting. I mean, we should have
Oh
focused
yeah,
on
he and that came out last week at your symposium, so that's
yeah.
quite a coincidence too.
We should
Yeah.
see if we can get a special appearance by UFO Tar Heel back on here to share that with
Yeah,
everybody.
he's been coaching his son's sports team, flag football, so he's going to be back doing. Hopefully, the next one we do,
All
we'll try
right.
and get him back on here. But I'll let you wrap this up. Thanks a lot for all the great information.
Yeah,
Subscribe,
thank
guys, to both Wicked Alien and the Hannibal TV. And if you don't want the wrestling part of the Hannibal TV, we have the Hannibal TV UFO channel as well.
but you gotta do the wrestling part of the Handball TV. I mean, I think it's just so complimentary. It really works together well. But yeah, thank you very much. Shout out to UFO Tar Heel again. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for the questions. Again, the book, as you see, engineeringinfinitybook.com. Go on there. There's you can look at it, flip book for free. We've got some new projects coming out of this that, again, I'm trying to launch and really give some focus to, moving that needle forward. So we'll try that. And Hannibal, I always appreciate the time and being on here and chatting with you and catching up.